There's no, you know, like chlorine you can use in your pools, or you could use in industrial waves, you know, you guys are engineers, you know what I'm talking about. You can do that with chlorine, but mustard gas is produced to kill people. And that's what it did. And it was a excruciating death. And if you did survive it, you were scarred permanently in most cases. This is a picture of some of the British soldiers who were gassed. And once again, it could have been their own selves who gassed them. It could have been the Brits that gassed the Brits. If the wind changes, you've got, you know, it comes back on you. This is what happens when you get hit with mustard gas. It is a blistering agent. And so this is a gentleman who's taken off his glove, and he had the mustard gas on the glove. He takes it off and somehow gets it onto his skin. So this is a neat way of looking at this. You can see the progression of the, not neat, but interesting. You can see the progression of the burn. This is here like the first day or so that this burn happens, and it blisters up. And then this is a week later. You can still see that this thing must hurt like, and it's just a tiny exposure. There is no other exposure other than that one part of this guy. It'll give you a good idea of what these guys were going through as they're recovering from this. Another interesting development is the use of airplanes and things like the Zeppelin, the big hot air balloons or helium balloons, those types of things. There is one aircraft that is called the flaming coffin. Oh, yeah, because you're sitting on top of your gas tank. There is no ejection button, and there's no brakes. That'd be kind of nice. So they call it the flaming coffin. This is where you see the dogfights getting its start. And most of this, once again, most of it was used as reconnaissance. It was used for intel. It was not used for massive bombing until like towards the end, and they start off by dropping hand grenades and little bombs, and they start shooting out of it at each other. Can you imagine shooting out of an airplane at the other airplane with your pistol? Later they figure out and they design to where you're shooting through the blades of the airplane, because they shot out, some moron decided he was going to shoot out the front, and they shot out the blades. As silly as that sounds, they had to rig a contraption that shot and got the bullet to go through so that you could mount the gun on the front of the airplane. So the Red Baron becomes very famous at this point. It's a German fighter pilot who supposedly has 80 wins, or 80, you know, he downs 80 planes, or he is killed, I think like 1917. You have the first aerial bombings of cities like Paris and Britain and London. In London, only about 500 people are killed because of this, but it's the beginning of what you see as World War II. You start to see that technology merge into what we see in the Luftwaffe and with the Americans and even the Brits. This is more psychological, it is more intel in the beginning, and this is not going to be at its peak until World War II. And then you can really get the cool stuff in like Vietnam and the dogfights and all that if you like that. I love this picture because I think it's hilarious. It's like, oops. And then these are some of the bombers. This is one of the German bombers. It is used, I believe, on 4 bombing runs, one of which is into London. They did not do very well. It's a heavy plane. It does not, it doesn't handle very well. It's a big honking target out there. The wings, it's pretty much about the wing is about the length of this room. It is not very well engineered. And we have the Zeppelins that are used. This is a Zeppelin, you know, like Goodyear blimp, the Hindenburg, that is flying over Westminster in England as a way of protecting, as a way of keeping an eye out. You're going to see a similar picture like this in World War II, which is kind of neat. 1916, you see a Zeppelin raid in Paris. So they're using these, and they're starting to use that technology, that aerial bombardment. And this is a pretty good sized hole. You can see it in relation to the people. It's not too bad. I'll show you some big holes when we get to the next war. All right, so I'm not going to start the U.S., but we will get the United States involved. We will finish up the war and do the propaganda when we get here on Thursday. I will give you your quizzes back on Thursday, and I will give you your political cartoons back. We have some time. I'll show you some of your friends, some of the cool ones that I got here.